Hello, everybody. It's really nice to look out and see all these fantastic friends and students and members of our general arts community at Columbia. So welcome to the Lenfest Center for the Arts at Columbia University. I'm Sarah Cole. I'm the Dean of the School of the Arts, and I'm really thrilled to be here with all of you and to be introducing two spectacular artists, both graduates of our MFA program, Joan Jonas, class of 1965, and Delphine Fawundu, class of 2018. Let me begin by saying that Columbia University School of the Arts recognizes Manhattan as part of the ancestral and traditional homeland of the Lenni Lenape and Wappinger people. At the School of the Arts, we believe that education and the arts are critical spaces to address issues of exclusion, erasure, and systemic discrimination, among many other things. Never have we needed such thinking and such work more than we do today. We also need joy and the uplift that the creative arts bring. I very warmly encourage you to come to many more of our programs, and you'll find them all on our website. So this is a very special occasion for us tonight. First of all, it's the first official event of our 60th anniversary year. The School of the Arts was founded in 1965, though arts have been taught at Columbia for many years, had been for many years prior to that. And we will be taking time this year to celebrate our extraordinary body of alums and faculty, to take pride in our students and in the great art that has come out of our school, and to work to ensure that this creative education continues for many years to come. How absolutely perfect, then, that our very first speaker of this anniversary is Joan Jonas, class of 65, our first year. This event also belongs to our Speak Now series. Speak Now features artists whose work reaches an especially broad public and embodies with great power the spirit of adventurous creativity that is the hallmark of the School of the Arts. Past speakers in this series include the writer and School of the Arts alum Claudia Rankin, the actor Glenn Close, the playwright and School of the Arts faculty member David Henry Wong, and the director Lee Silverman. These Speak Now speakers are very diverse, but one thing they have in common is that they bring with them and with their work a sense of urgency in the work that they do, the stories they tell, their attitude toward the world, and the place of art within it. They have whimsy and humor, depth and commitment. Their work is multiform in its nature and long-lasting in its impact. All of this characterizes the art of our speaker tonight, Joan Jonas. Joan Jonas is one of the greats, an artist of enormous versatility and freedom who works in a dizzying range of media and styles, including video, performance, installation, sound, text, drawing, and sculpture. Her experiments and productions in the late 60s and early 70s continue to be crucial to the development of many contemporary art genres and to inspire younger artists and the general public. Since 1968, her practice has explored ways of seeing, the rhythms of rituals, the authority of objects and gestures, and so much more. Joan Jonas has exhibited and performed extensively around the world, and here I'm going to be very, very sparing in mentioning a few highlights of her distinguished career, and I encourage you to take a look at your program, which gives a little bit more of the bios of both of our speakers today. Joan Jonas's notable exhibition history includes Documenta 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, and 13, and biennials around the world over the years. These include, among others, the United States Pavilion for the 56th Venice Biennale and a solo show at the Tate Modern in London, and some of us were just talking about that earlier and how spectacular it was in that space. Most recently, the Museum of Modern Art in New York hosted a retrospective of Jonas's work, which came with rapturous reviews of this native daughter whose work has stood the test of time so powerfully and continues to grapple with some of the most pressing issues of our world. Here's what Holland Carter wrote in the New York Times about this retrospective, quote, "Joan Jonas is one of the great and still undersung creative figures of our time, A trailblazer in the realms of video, performance, conceptual, and installation art, she arrived more than 60 years ago at a point on the vanguard highway where the feminist and the early environmentalist movements met, and she has kept moving forward since. Joan Jonas is the recipient of many awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award given by the Solomon Guggenheim Museum in 2009, and the Non-June Pike Prize in 2024, awarded to artists who have contributed to the development of contemporary art, mutual understanding, and world peace. In 2018, she was awarded the prestigious Kyoto Prize, given to those individuals who have contributed significantly to the scientific, cultural, and spiritual betterment of mankind. That pretty much says it all about this incredible artist. Joan Jonas will be in conversation tonight with another great artist of great versatility and depth, our very own Delphine Fawundu, assistant professor in the visual arts program here at Columbia. She's the author of the critically acclaimed book, Mfon, did I get that right? Mm-hmm. Women Photographers of the African Diaspora, and is an artist who works deeply in many materials of indigenous African origin. She has recent solo exhibitions at such places as the historic Lefferts House in Prospect Park in Brooklyn, the Newark Museum of Art, and the Princeton University Museum. Her awards include the 2024 Guggenheim Fellowship, the Anonymous Was a Woman Award, and the New York Foundation for the Arts Photography Fellowship. She has had many commissions, including the Park Avenue Armory's 100 Years, 100 Women project, and the Audible Public Art. Her works are in the permanent collections of many prestigious museums and collections. So that's a very brief introduction of these wonderful people. Joan Jonas is going to speak for a bit about her work and show us some slides. This will be followed by a conversation with Delphine, and after that, we'll have a chance to take questions from the audience. We're going to ask that you write those down, and so we'll be passing out note cards, and ushers will be coming around to collect them in a little bit. So please join me in welcoming these two fantastic artists, and particularly to the podium now, Joan Jonas.
Thank you very much, and I'm so glad to be here with Delphine. Don't worry, she's going to get to talk. I am going to talk for a while, and then we'll speak together. But if you want to break in and say something, please feel free. It's very strange, actually, for me to be with somebody who's not going to say anything for a while. But nice, nice. And I'll just say, to explain, I went to Columbia. It was 1965, and it was a very small department. I think there were maybe 3 or 4 of us, and we had our studios in the rotunda of the library, tiny, tiny little studios. And I got my MFA in 1 year here. It was for a year. And we'll talk, you asked me about that later, but I just wanted to mention how different it was. So to begin with, I'm just going to say one sentence and then show you a piece, because I wanted you to see one entire conceit, because I make many pieces, and many of them are long, like an hour long. And so I just wanted to show you one that's 6 minutes long, so you see how I deal with form and so on. And I made this statement a long time ago, and it really holds now. I didn't see a major difference between a poem, a sculpture, a film, or a dance. A gesture has for me the same weight as a drawing. Draw, erase, memory erased. So I started out in art history, and then switched to sculpture, and then switched to the performance and all the other video pieces. So first I'm going to show this piece called Waltz. So could we just show the first, yeah.
And if we could bring down the lights, please.
showing this is because it was not at the MoMA, and I wanted to show something that had a little bit of the different elements of my work. But I won't talk about it. It's called Waltz. And nothing happens, and it was a series of improvisations. And while we were working on it, because you asked about my process, Jeffrey and Sir Rodney Sir dropped, the way they did in Nova Scotia was a shot in Canada, where I go in the summer, in Cape Breton. They dropped in, so I said, please come in and join us. So it was an improvisation. Anyway, all right, we'll go to the next. So these mirror pieces, Delphine and I are going to talk about the mirror works later when we talk together. So I'll just say there's a few images from my mirror performances, which I began in 68, or no, 70. And I'll talk about that later. Next. We had a signal that I forgot about the signal. These are just images from the mirror works. The mirror was my, this is vertical roll, my first prop, and maybe my most important prop for all of its qualities. This is a quote. I'm not showing you anything incomplete because they're long. This is a 20-minute piece called Vertical Roll, and it's dealing with the dysfunction of the TV signal, which makes this vertical roll happen. And I did a whole performance and work based on this. There are no edits in this tape. It was a continual performance in a space in California, in Venice. And here you see me hitting the mirror with a spoon. And then there are many more images in this piece, but we just wanted to show you this construction. It's about 20 minutes long. And these are some shots of that performance, drawing the head of a dog, one of my motifs. Again, I'm not going to show you this whole one yet. This is just the setup of my video work. It was one of the first performances at Legudity Space in New York, and it was called Organic Honey's Visual Telepathy. And I played the role. I worked with my identity, because this piece was really exploring the possibility and the question of what is female imagery. Because at that time, during the feminist movement and at that particular aspect of it, people were always calling this, like, the sun is masculine, the moon is feminine, the masts on the ship are masculine, things like that. So I just really wanted to explode that theory about this masculine and feminine idea about identity and objects. So there were 3 or 4 performers, and the video camera was live, and it passed the image to the monitor and the projector. And so what the audience saw was kind of a double thing of what the camera saw on the projector, which was edited, not edited, but filmed in a certain way, and the live performance, which was going on at the same time. So they saw a double. And I really have always enjoyed that loading up of situations to make a complex statement. This is a piece that was done on the docks. You'll see. It's called Song Delay. It's also about 20 minutes long. And this piece deals with distance. And how does distance alter the sound? What you're seeing now is the natural sound delay. They hit the blocks of wood together, but you don't hear it. There's a slight delay, and that happens in the distance. So one of my themes and interests in the landscape is dealing with these inconsistencies and perceptions. We were very lucky when we were filming this film. The boat went by just at the right moment. And this was all on the Lower West Side of Manhattan, on the docks. These are just some shots from the Organic Honey. It's not quite in order. It was an installation, so the work shifts between performance and installation. And I never perform in my installations. There has to be a special setup. So I showed you already the setup for the performance of this particular piece. And the way I work my work out is I'll make up the beginning. I mean, I begin, and then I have to perform it in some way to find out how to develop and how it works. And so my process, we're going to talk about that later, is to I'll work with the developing the performance in a space. I'm a little thirsty. I wonder if somebody could stretch, give me the glass. Thank you. Thank you. The first prop that I used was the mirror. I made a piece called Wind, which I'm not showing. It's, I think, your favorite one. I don't know.
Yes.
And it's a 7-minute piece filmed on the coldest day of the year on the beach of Long Island. Thank you. And it's called Wind. I'll just take a sip and then you put it down. Just put it down there. And so it was my very first video. It was a film, actually. And it really was about the wind. This is what happens to me. I didn't have that in my mind exactly, but we all went out there, 5 or 6 of us, and it was the coldest and the windiest day of the year. So the whole piece was really driven by the wind. And I will show you a few pieces later in which the wind also plays a part. So the wind became a psychological presence in my work because of that first encounter. And that's somewhat the way my work develops. Of course, there are conscious decisions and choices, but things like that make it happen. Now this is a piece called Mirage, and it was, again, my work is based on different spaces, and this is a piece developed especially for the Anthology Film Archives in Manhattan, in New York, that was at one point much smaller than it is now, and it was a piece based on this space. So some of the work, much of it, develops in relation to a space. The outdoor space with the idea of the indoor space in this case was a film theater, and that screen, I could change it. By pushing buttons, I could make it wider, narrower, taller, shorter, these different shapes. And once Jonas Mekas came into the room with P. Adams Sidney, and P. Adams said to Joan, because they were watching me work with the screen, and P. Adams said, "She's going to break the screen." And Jonas said, "That's okay, let her do it." So that was who Jonas Mekas was. Yeah. I'll just read this. Ritual is part of my language, my own ritual, although I am interested in the rituals of other cultures. In studying art history, every painting has a story, and many practices began in ritual. The No Theater began as a ritual. I studied the early periods of art, the Minoan, the Mycenaean. I spent a year in Greece and several months in Crete because I was drawn by the story of the Minoans, the women who dove the whales, the Minoan women in the sea, with the porpoises, which attracted me. And of course, I wish that I could do that. No, dolphins, sorry. In the 1960s, when I was doing research and getting prepared to go into performance, I saw the Hopi snake dance in the Southwest, which was amazing. All of these ideas have continued through the years and have been applied in different ways to later works. They have to do with my way of performing, my way of disguising myself, and working in relation to the camera. Considering what I just, sorry, this is, So this is a piece based on the writings of Abby Warburg, and I first performed it
I have the sensation
in Dia Beacon.
of
We're
being
not
a
going to look at it, the
seismograph.
whole thing. It's an hour-long performance. And it was the first time that I worked with Jason
Assembled
Moran, the
from the wooden
jazz
pieces of a
pianist
plant
and wonderful composer.
that has been
And we've worked together
transplanted
on
from the
about
east
4 pieces since.
into the fertile
And
northern
for my last
German
upcoming,
plain,
one of my last upcoming
and
pieces,
onto which
Jason
an
will have some
Italian
music.
branch
But it's not a
was
live
grafted.
situation. But Jason played live for this piece.
I
And we went up
let
to Dia
the
Beacon. They gave us
signs
the
that I
space
received
for 6
come
weeks.
out of
No,
me.
6 weeks. We
Come
could go every day.
in this
And so we
epoch
went up there every
of
day
chaotic
and worked on the piece
decline.
there. I had all the
Even the
script worked
weakest
out in relation to Abby
has
Warburg's
the duty
writings. But
to
I didn't have my
strengthen the
movements.
will,
And Jason didn't have the
cosmic
music. So what we
order.
would do is we would set up a situation with the props and read the script, and then Jason would make up something and play, and I would run around and make up movements because I really responded to his music, and he responded to my movements. In this case, I'm using large screens to change the space. So this is just,
Serpent as weather deity.
this is based, he was inspired also by the
Serpent in
by what I
lightning
saw,
shape.
but I, of course, could never quote or refer to the
American
Hopi,
Pompeii.
nor refer to their imagery. But because I saw the snake dance, I wanted to make a big
Form of a house.
painting of a snake. And it was in the performance. And what you see behind me, this is typical of
An
performing,
irrational
making a
animal
drawing
figure.
against a backdrop of video projection. Why is there nothing?
Animal dance.
Okay, I guess it was just too dark. Anyway, against a backdrop of a video projection, also drawing in the sand with a stick. And Ragini, the other performer, is moving this
Plateaus.
assortment of connected screens
Masses of limestone.
behind me. I don't know if you can see it. Again, the shape, the scent, the feel of things in Dia Beacon, and the performers. That's an image of melancholia that I'm playing with my dog in the background. Because melancholia has an animal in it. And these are other images from the installation of the shape, the scent, the feel of things. I had done a piece involving Hilda Doolittle's poetry, HD, and the shape, the scent, the feel of things, the title, came from Hilda Doolittle. HD, as she's called, the shape, the scent, the feel of things. I often do that. Things blend in one piece over another. This is a piece called Reanimation. So I shot Reanimation in Norway, actually, although it's based on an Icelandic story by Halldór Laxness, who's a wonderful writer, called Under the Glacier. This was a kind of pivotal piece because it was the first time that I'd thought about the environment in a certain way. Of course, I shot things outdoors and dealt with nature and with the landscape, but not with what was happening really in the environment. And Under the Glacier, while I was working on it, he wrote that in 1965, and it occurred to me that glaciers are melting. So I changed the name to Reanimation, and it became about the idea related to many other ideas that the glaciers are disappearing and melting. So what you just saw, I made that because I had a friend who lived in the Arctic Circle. I'm also Another big influence on my work is travel. And whenever I go someplace, I take a camera and I record and I get ideas and so on. So in this case, I was invited by a friend to go to Norway, to the Arctic Circle, which really appealed to me to go really north. And every day we got up and put on snowsuits, got into her car, and she drove me around. It was amazing. In this case, you see, also I drew in the snow. Another ongoing practice is drawing. And from the very beginning, drawing is part of my vocabulary. I heard you say something about your language. One of my desires was to make my own language, to make a language of images, and that's what I was working with. What you just saw was ink on the snow. So trying always to find a situation which involved the material and the idea, the content of the piece, and in this case, drawing animals in the snow. And the singer was Ande Sambe, who I met in Norway. He's a Sami singer. The Sami are the people who live in the north of the Scandinavian countries. And Ande is a traditional singer. He comes to New York sometimes and he's dressed in a little elf costume because he comes for meetings with indigenous people here. But that's his singing. He was wonderful. This is a piece called, well, whatever, I'm sorry. But the drawing you see there I made with ink and ice. So it's also using the materials that I was working with. So I poured a little bit of ink on a piece of paper, and you saw the camera was overhead, and then I put ice on the paper and moved the ice around and made a drawing with the ink and the ice. Maybe we could turn this down a little bit. This is one of my favorite pieces of Jason Moran's, and this was part of the performance in which I'm drawing as fast as I can in relation to the music that he's playing. We're showing you another video later on, which the same music exists. And I think it's one thing that interests me is how when you transfer either sound or image from one context to another, it alters the meaning of that image or sound, or your perception of it. So we'll show you another later on, but this is just a quote. This is an image from They Come to Us Without a Word, which was in the Venice Biennale. And the building of the US in the Venice Biennale is a small kind of neoclassical building with 4 rooms and a center. And so this piece was about different creatures, bees, fish, and then the wind. And the last room was called the homeroom because there were children in this piece. I wanted to include children because I wanted to indicate without making a statement that children are going to be left. They are being affected, and they will have to deal with what's left of what's happening now to the environment and everything else. So children are very important, but I didn't ask them to say anything or to reference it. I just wanted them to become performers in my work, which was really great. They were all children of friends of mine. Jason Moran's twins, Zoe Casabir. I can't remember all their names, but they were like 4, and they became over and over again, they performed in my works. So I really like that they became, and I would call them up now. I don't know where they all are. I know where some of them are, and I would ask them to come back because I like that kind of, that continuation. So this is an image from that about the bees, and to make this, I found a beekeeper in Brooklyn, and we went out to his bees and filmed the hive, and then had the children walk around in the projection, which were part of the piece. So in that piece in Venice, each room had a reference to this was the bee room, and I made many drawings of bees, and they were on the walls. And then this was one of the videos that was projecting. Also in each room, there was a quote of a ghost story from Cape Breton, where I go in the summer. And I have a book of ghost stories that are real, that really people say happened to them. And I like the everyday tone of that writing. What interests me about the bees, and nobody ever answered that for me, maybe somebody here can, the shapes of the beehives, these shapes, the fact that the bees can make those space, it's one of the miraculous things of nature. That's what I'll say. And these are images from that piece. Another shot of that work. I also work with kites. I'm going to show this. This is, again, the piece of music that I love of Jason's. And this is part of one of the rooms in Venice. That's Zora and Lila. Could we have the sound? Maybe it's not on. So these are other images from that same piece in Venice. And this, like, there's two women, Zora and, sorry, I can't remember people's name, because Willa Schwabsky, Zora Kasabir, and they are pulling each other's hair, actually. Next. And this is, I'm just showing a little clip of this, part of that piece where I was ringing bells and later on moving in relation to projections of sea creatures. So this is one of my latest pieces called Moving Off the Land, and it was commissioned by TBA 21 about the ocean. And so I really extensively went into working and doing research about the ocean. So for a few years, I carried my video camera everywhere. I went to every place where there were fish. People say, how can you look at fish captured? But it's the only way we can see fish is in aquariums. I began to work with a marine biologist, David Gruber, and the way we worked together was let's see what's next.
The mind evolved in the sea.
Anyway, the way we
Water
work together,
made it possible. All early stages took
This is
place
Zora.
in water.
the way we
The
work
origin
together,
of life, the birth of animals, the evolution of nervous systems, the appearances of complex bodies that made brains worth having.
basically we're talking about everything comes from the sea. We're made up the same chemicals. It's quite something. And as I did research this, I found that fish are sentient beings, actually, once you start doing research about fish. As maybe many of you know, but when I started doing these pieces, people were not aware of it, but there's been a lot of research, and it's all come out. I'm sure many of you have heard it, about ocean creatures and other images. That's this jellyfish. It doesn't look like it. So I made these.
Swordfish, herring, trout, dogfish, goldfish, lionfish,
They're saying, they're giving a list of different fish, the children.
squid, viperfish.
And I built these shapes because of the sound quality. I couldn't show the videos in that big space, and they had to be protected and in structures. So they're really, in a way, sculptural objects that they're being shown in. And this is
Two marine
another
biologists
shot of
published a study of giant manta
array.
rays
But we
responding
won't look
to
at
their...
this. The idea, the way I started out this piece, I thought, the ocean. How will I deal with the ocean, this vast body? So, as usual, I went to mythology. And so I really focused on the idea of the mermaid. And to me, the idea of the mermaid is related to the fact that we all come from the sea. And mermaids, that may be a remembrance. You know, maybe they really exist. I don't know. I mean, no, they don't. But the mermaid, to me, was represented this idea that we were once all in the sea, and we came onto dry land. I mean, whales, as you know, were on the dry land, and they could walk around, and then they went back into the sea. So, the way I worked with David was he would show me his footage, and I would choose what I wanted and then mix it in with my footage. We didn't work together on the actual piece, but he gave me material, and these sparkling green projection is one of David's, one of David's projections. David is a marine biologist, and he's been diving for years and has incredible, and he's right now doing a project about whales, a sperm whale in the Caribbean. I think that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's just quite refreshing and inspiring, to see you talk about your work and to experience your work. So thank you so much for just making time to be with us today.
Thank you.
Yes, so I have some questions for you. Okay, so what do you think has been the key to sustaining a long and relevant career in the art world? And how do you balance innovation with staying true to your artistic voice?
First of all, I'll say that I don't know what it is to stay true to my ideas, but I mean, I know what you mean, because you develop your own visual elements, and there are many things. I mean, the first one I showed, the wind became part of my, part of my performer. It was a performer in a way. For a long time, I mean, a lot of people, I would do something and they, oh, Joan Jonas, we never, finally. So I didn't get famous at the beginning at all. But I was in an art community, and what kept me going was, in a way, I would always say, well, I'm an artist's artist, because my audience was artists. And for me, that was so important. And I had so many wonderful friends who were artists. You know, that was it. Plus of all, I love art. And so for me, art is very important. I studied art history. I go to museums all the time. You can never stop learning about art. And also, from the very beginning, because I was interested in, you know, when I studied art, I really was interested in how things begin. How does art begin? The Minoans and the Mycenaeans, they were early practitioners. And I spent a year in Greece once. I was very lucky, but because of the Minoan, there's women who dove with the dolphins. And I think what kept me going was my love of art and my interest. It's a dialogue that we have. Like, I have a dialogue with younger people. Like the other night, I met a poet at a party, and we had a marvelous conversation. So that is very wonderful. And then, on the other hand, there are people my age. So there's a communication between the different generations. In other words, we don't feel unequal or older or younger. We can talk to each other. So that is, I don't know if that.
No, that's great. And it's inspiring because, I mean, when we were upstairs, you were talking about new work that's coming, that you're working on. You know, you continue to keep working, which is really, you know, is special and it's very important. You're following what you must do as an artist, which I think as artists, we all have that drive that you continue to follow. Okay, so mirrors play a powerful role in your work, prompting deep reflections, both literal and metaphorical. You once said, in addition to creating space, a mirror also disturbs space, suggesting another reality through the looking glass, to see oneself as the other, to see oneself among, as one with the others. That's really powerful. What experience or societal ideas first led you to explore these themes of reflection, perception, and identity in your work?
I could just be very concrete, and I say when I first, Borges was just translated, I think in the 60s sometime, maybe somebody could correct me, and a friend of mine, Joan Jonas actually, gave me a book of Borges called Labyrinths, and I immediately fell in love with it, and with his writing. And he talks about mirrors all the way through, their references to mirrors. So one of my first performances, I made a mirror costume. In other words, a dress with mirrors pasted on it. And I took out all the quotes about mirrors from Borges, and I memorized them. So that was my first way to deal with mirrors. But mirrors, and then I made performances with 15 people. I just did them at MoMA, actually. And 15 people, women, carrying mirrors. They had to be women. Sorry, sometimes when I would do it over again, they say, can't there be men? No. No, because I used to deal with role playing. So the women's were carrying the mirrors. They were 18 inches by 5 feet. And 2 men were also in the performance, and they would continuously move among the women with the mirrors and pick them up and carry them to another place. And the men also carried in a woman who was flat like this the whole time, lying on the floor. That was my first part in that piece, where it was like you had to keep your body stiff like a mirror. And so one of my main concerns is perception from the very beginning. All these things, it's interesting. You're totally involved in the beginning, and then it becomes so much a part of your vocabulary that you don't think about it that way anymore, right? So for me to say all this, it's not what I'm thinking about exactly. But anyway, so mirrors for me represented so much. I also dealt with the idea of narcissism, and when I started working with video, I got a video camera, and the video for me was an ongoing mirror. So the monitor of the video was an ongoing mirror. So everything became a reflection and an extension of the body. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, and it's really interesting the way that, you know, you use the video, but then within the video, there's another mirror, and then the reflection continues, you know, and it just creates this ongoing world of reflection. And also the way that it makes the audience respond and feel and experience that level of perception as well, or misperception, you know.
It's interesting you say that, because one thing that interested me was that when the mirrors were faced the audience, you could see, because the mirrors went across the audience like this, the performance, and you could see everybody going, either that or, you know, they're embarrassed. People, if you sit at a dinner table facing a mirror, you'll see that the people on either side of you don't want you to see them looking at themselves in the mirror, right? We all do this. And that interested me, that the mirror made people so uneasy.
Yeah.
And also they were heavy and they could break. They were glass, but nothing, so far, no mirror has broken in a piece. I should wear some wood, but anyway.
I just want to say, too, that we will be collecting questions if you're writing your questions down, so we could get to those at the end. So also, this next question is really important to me, because I do something like also similar to you, accumulating and reusing works, like the works just keep on growing, you know, so I'm interested in...
I'm sorry, what?
I'm saying like your use and reuse and accumulation of materials in your work speaks to transformation across time and space. And so, for example, in the Venice Biennial, they come to us without a word. You talked about it as a work in progress that kind of transformed into something else. So could you expand on this idea? This approach feels very natural in my own work, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about the process of how works continue to grow and transform.
Well, each piece, to begin with, each piece, like the early video piece, I did that piece many times and in different spaces, and I always try to make my pieces better, but it really isn't about that. It's about making them work in a different way, and also adding and subtracting, which you probably do. So just as a concrete example, my piece, the one about Under the Glacier, when the glaciers are melting, in 73, I did a piece called Disturbances in a swimming pool. So with women swimming in this, you know, either naked or with white dresses on, underwater, and filming them underwater. And I used that footage in Reanimation, how many years later, because to show the idea that everything is going to be underwater. So that footage fit perfectly. And of course, nobody could remember the other one. I do that often because I'm interested in how the context alters the piece. And like right now, I'm working on a piece. It's going to open soon, and it's a series of shapes that are based on shapes I've used before but based on them, not the same. So it's true of everybody. Many artists work that way, developing themes and images and objects. And then I collect. So whenever I go to any place, I try to go to the antique store or the secondhand store or the flea market. I don't do it anymore, I've got too many things. But I collect things and I take them home, and then I use them in different ways. For instance, I collected, for those of you who saw the MoMA show, there was a whole table full of objects made out of wood that I found in Canada, many of them. They're carvings by local artists, so I collect outsider art. I don't like the word folk art, outsider art. That's what I do collect. And I just gave all those actually to MoMA because I wanted them to be safe, that little collection of objects. Why am I mentioning that? But all those objects have been in several pieces, and they have a different function. You know, like the rabbit. I did a whole piece about rabbits. That rabbit wasn't in the piece, but I made drawings of rabbits. So the themes come and go, as always.
And I'm sure that, because it's also a performance of materials, and I'm sure that sometimes they're telling you what they want to do, and you may not, when you initially get them, you may not even know what they're going to do until they kind of call you to them.
I love the way she says that. I believe that. She says they tell us what to do. Yeah, I think so too. It's like when you get a stone, it tells you where to put it or anything like that.
Yep. Okay, so I've watched Wind many times. It's one of my favorites, and it's so compelling. So collaboration seems to play a vital role in your work, whether you're with your artist friends or nature or the unique spaces in New York. And you talked about traveling and being in a space and also collecting through video and photography. So can you share your thoughts on the importance of collaboration in your practice and how these different elements shape your process?
Well, I'll say right away that for a more recent one, I never thought of it as a collaboration with Jason. It was something we developed together. I developed the movement and the text and the space and everything, and Jason did the piano in a reaction. Together, I'd say, please, he would have several different examples, and I'd choose the one I liked the best. So that's how we worked together. But what I realized later on, when people kept calling it a collaboration, I mean, it was my piece, but what I realized is that when the music came together, it was a collaboration, because the music was so important, of course, in relation to the work, as it always is. Music is very important. With the Wind, I was working with a little group at that time. It was in 58? No, yeah, 1958, I can't believe it. So we went out to the beach, and we had done an indoor performance, which I directed. I'll just say briefly that I direct the performances, but I do like input. I don't like passive things that I'm gonna move around. So I'm really interested in how other people move. For instance, with one of my performers, Ragini Haas, in the Shape, the Scent, and Feel things, she's German. She would come over and stay with me, and then we'd work on the piece. And the way I worked with her is I would demonstrate the movement I wanted her to do, and then she would do it in her way. So that was another way to come together with somebody else. And with the Wind, we tried to perform the same thing outdoors as indoors, but the wind really affected us. And I had also the mirror costumes. I couldn't get the mirror costume off after we were freezing. I had to rip it off. We had to cut the mirror costume off. And it was kind of funny. But the Wind was the collaborator. The Wind was the unexpected guest.
Yeah, which is great. Because it's almost, again, like you don't know how it's going to turn out because the wind is going to do what it's going to do. But it's interesting to think about that as we are in this state with our climate and understanding that nature is going to do what it's going to do, and we need to figure out how to work with it instead of trying to control it. So yeah, it's really interesting to think about that now as, we're in this
Whenever
state.
in Canada, where I go in the summer, whenever there's a big wind, I rush outside.
Okay, so what brought you to the MFA program at Columbia? I know you spoke about it a little bit before. And how has it impacted you and your career as an artist? And what advice do you give to some of our students who are in the room now and other students in MFA programs?
Well, my first advice to anybody is love what you do. You have to love it, because you may never be, I say this to students, you may never be recognized, but you have to love what you do. And also develop friends. You can have a group, you can have colleagues, and you can form your own group. Particularly now I would say that, because it used to be that one city, oh, Paris, oh, New York. Now it's everywhere. And so it's important that you have a group where you are, where you can show each other your work. You could have shows. You can do your own work. You don't have to depend on institutions. And what was the other part of your question?
And can you talk about your early experience at Columbia?
Yeah.
Yes.
At Columbia. Well, what I did here was I was making sculpture. My teacher his name was Peter Agostini. And there were two artists teaching here then, Peter Agostini and Nick Caroni. Peter Agostini was a sculptor, and he was working with plaster. So he was making you know, casting balloons in plaster, blah, blah, blah. I grew to love plaster around him, and I made a lot. I learned how to make plaster molds at Columbia. I really enjoyed that. I'm trying to remember what happened at Columbia, but the other thing I did was I took in the year, you could take academic courses. So I took one course in poetry, taught by a man named Fred Dupy, in modernist poetry that my mother had dated a long time ago. And another course in Chinese bronzes. I don't remember the teacher, but there was a big collection in New York someplace. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's so interesting to think about just the freedom to experiment and how you allowed yourself to just make what you felt came natural. So can you talk about how you ended up experimenting with video? Like, from
Well, I was
yeah.
always, from many years before video, interested in film.
Okay.
So I went to a lot of films and to the film anthology in New York, and there used to be films all over the city, you know, good films.
Yes.
And, you know, the big films, plus I studied purposely the films of the Russians, the Russian filmmakers, you know, early film, when it was just beginning. The Russian filmmakers were interested in filming everything that moves, you know, and movement. The German filmmakers, the Italian filmmakers. I really, it's something I love, film, as much as painting and sculpture. But, so the video camera appeared in the 60s, I think. I mean, Namjoon was my neighbor, by the way. I can't believe I got the Namjoon Prize, because he lived next door to me, and he never would have dreamed that I would ever get a prize, actually. No, once I was working on a video, I Want to Live in the Country, and I had there were several different elements that I was combining, and he walked through and he said to me, I never thought that women could think of two things at the same time.
Oh my God.
No, but I don't, maybe he was joking. But he was a very charming, I called him an elf. He was like a little elf. Anyway, so actually Peter Campus was one of the first people to get a video camera. And then I went to Japan in 1970 and bought a video camera. Because of film, I wanted to make films. I called them films. And the video camera was the first. It was a radical moment. I try to explain where you could have a camera and a monitor and immediately see your own image in your studio. That was radical for us. Nobody had that. You had to, you know, there was just film where you had to take it, and it was a delay in getting it developed. So it was a very special moment when people began to work with video.
Yeah. And finally, just thinking about, you know, your career as this dynamic artist who's working across disciplines, what are the most important things that you've learned from being an artist?
I
on
know,
your own
that's a tough
practice?
question. I looked at that before. Perseverance. It's hard to answer that question. I think I learned, one thing I know I learned was how to deal with my own self-doubt about my work. You know, I don't know, maybe you're experiencing this too, but all of a sudden I could just go and start working. I didn't have to sit home and think, oh my God, what will I do? That's one thing I developed. I just think that you learn, continue. You never stop learning. I've said that before.
Right.
And I learned that the world is a beautiful place in spite of the many problems that exist. And it's so important to keep communicating that to each other and to other people. It's what we have.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're saying to each other now. Work with what you have.
Yeah.
Do not let the world intrude upon you. Of course, you have to be aware. I think also it's very important for me to know what's going on in the world and to be aware, but also to always have that center to go to and to be in with your friends.
Right. I feel like exactly what you said is what I keep telling myself over and over and over again, especially during these times, you know, and it has a lot to do with balance, you know, and trying to find that balance and that peace to sustain you. Yeah. Well, thank you. So I'm going to open this up to
I just
some of
want to
the
say,
questions.
I'm
Yes.
sorry that we're
Yeah.
not showing your work right now. I want to see your work soon.
going to show it to you. Thank you. So thank you all for your questions. I'm going to go through some of the questions. How much time do we have left? Oh, we're good? Okay, good. Okay, so Mitchell said, okay, you shared your love of collecting and how this has shaped your artistry. So they're asking, what is it about an object that compels you?
Well, there's so many different objects that compel me. And I do collect really good folk art,
Yes.
carvings that are beautiful. I like a kind of crudity about an object. In other words, I don't collect really refined drawings and, like Renaissance.
Yeah.
I'm not even drawn to do that. I like the quirkiness of certain things. And the strangeness, strange would be a good word to use, but also beautiful. Like I collect stones. Maybe everybody in this room does.
Yes.
But I have a beautiful stone at home in the shape of a dog's head. So I'm always looking for dog stones. I'm sure you all have a dog stone, right? And the other stone is a heart stone. I look for heart stone. Those are just some of the things. But otherwise, I love going. It's one thing my mother and I could get along doing was going to antique stores and secondhand stores.
Those are the best. You never know what you're looking for, but then it finds you.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm not looking for anything particular.
Exactly. Okay, so here's another question. Do you ever feel lonely or discouraged, and how do you cope with it?
Of course. No, but less as I'm older. What cured me of that, and I felt that a lot when I was much younger, and also I didn't know if what I was doing was good or bad, or, is it good, is it going to be good? I'd be scared. I was scared. I had stage fright. I would be. I worked with theater groups too, but I learned how to focus on my work.
Yes.
I focus on my work. If I get lonely or discouraged or sad, I do my work. And because it takes me out of that place, closed off.
Yes, that's great. All right. John Kessler wants to know, when you were getting your MFA, did you take studio classes, and where were they?
Well, I did. I
Yeah.
was doing studio classes in the library of the Rotunda. What
Okay.
can I say? The Rotunda of the library. And yeah, I was here, the academic ones that I mentioned were just something I was doing also, but I was here to do work. And Peter Agostini, whatever. Once he spent a long time criticizing what I was doing, and then afterwards he said, I don't want to do this anymore, it exhausts me, and then I can't do my work.
See, it's so interesting, like what keeps you, even in those spaces, you're in school for many of us, and you're getting critiqued, and something tells you, okay, yes, but I have to do this. I have to keep going and, do whatever that voice inside of me is telling me to do, regardless of all the, all of the critiques and everything. And it's interesting to think about how you find that balance too, right?
It's not easy, I guess, for some people. I remember I went rushing home crying when I went, I was in the museum school in Boston.
Yeah.
And the teacher came around and looked, we had to work in clay from the model. I had never done that before, ever. And the teacher came around and said, it has no neck. And I went rushing home crying. I remember seeing one of my students, the tears slowly welling up in her eyes and then spilling over slowly. We all, but yeah.
Okay. So someone wants you to talk a little bit more about working with the marine biologist. How did that unfold?
Well, I met him through TBA 21. They had these gatherings, and I read that he was there, and they didn't get us together for any particular reason, but I read that he was dealing with how fish perceive. In other words, he did develop cameras and lenses and had them made so that he could film fish underwater. Because some fish, you can't see their luminosity without a special lens, and so on and so forth. And so I was very interested in the fact that he was dealing with the perception of fish, and that was one of my main interests, was perception, how we perceive. And so we met, and then he began to give me footage, and that, I have to say, everybody always laughs. He left his hard drive in my loft one night, and we emptied the whole thing. No, but it was okay. We didn't steal it. I mean, he knew. But so he shot beautiful footage of underwater life, and we're still in touch. And last year for MoMA, I did a piece based on his research about whales. It was really a piece about him. It was for him, David Gruber. But he's working with the sperm whales. And he gave to me, this is how generous he is, he gave me the first recording ever of a sperm whale birth that they'd recorded, you know, a plane, a drone had recorded, and it's never been recorded before. And he let me put that in my work. So that was very generous, and we had a great exchange. It was wonderful.
That's great. Okay, here's a good one. How do you see the role of dogs in your work?
The role of dogs?
Yeah, that dog.
Dogs are my friends.
Yes.
When I first used a dog, the dog was just there, and I was working with whatever was there. I mean, fans. I had fans. My grandmother left me a whole box of fans, and that dog, because I left them on the floor, chewed them all up. That was my first dog. But anyway, so now I always have the dogs because they're creatures and they have presence. And that one, the white dog that you saw in the first film I showed of the white dog was walking around. That dog, I'd get up and I'd set the camera up, and the dog would come over and get in the right position. You know, I didn't have to tell that dog ever to come over here and perform.
I love the conversation that you were having with the dog in the, you know, it was a back and forth thing. It was great. Have you ever been moved to tears by a work of art?
Well, not moved to tears, but moved, deeply moved, and also deeply involved. Of course, film. Of course, I've been moved. I cry in the films, but I don't cry in the museum. And I'm just thinking about what's the name of the Spanish painter, the famous one in the Prado, who did the huge paintings of the royal family? Velázquez. I mean, he's just a genius, and as many artists are, but I love his paintings. So many times I stand in front of a painting, and I can't get enough of it. But I'm not moved to tears. I'm just deeply involved with looking at it and looking at all the parts and how they come together, you know, so on and so forth.
Yeah, sometimes I think about how art makes you feel even before you start to think about interpreting, you know, and how the connection that goes beyond touch, you know, which is what.
But have you moved to tears?
It's hard to get me to.
Okay.
Yeah, I deeply feel, but sometimes, even with movies, it's kind of like, it's coming, but it never gets there. Okay, so another question by Ani. What is precious to you?
What is what?
What is precious to you?
Precious.
Precious, yeah.
My dog.
Okay. Okay, and we have a
No, my dog and life and my friends.
Okay.
I mean, they are precious.
Yes.
The ones I've known for such a long time.
And Ani said that the two of you have the same birthday, July 13th.
Yeah,
One about, who's Ani? Nice, you have the same birthday. Okay. And how do you keep your mind strong to pursue experimental art? I think you said, you talked about this. Yeah, but.
How do I what?
How do you keep your mind in a strong place to do experimental?
Well, you know, the only thing you have to do is you have to use discipline.
Yes.
And some you get up in the morning, you don't want to do it. But at some points, I've always, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to make something today, not knowing what it is. That's one discipline. And then you can put those things together, because montage is the way I work. And I think, you know, making art is not fun sometimes, right? And you just have to push and keep doing it. It's work.
Yes.
And that's how you work things out. It's not just, oh my God, this is so beautiful, I can't stand it. It's, this is terrible, and I have to do something about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, what does this even mean? Okay, so final question is, let's see. Okay, do you have a space that you want to research? Is there something that you haven't researched yet that you want to research?
It's hard to answer that question because when I stopped my ocean piece, where I was doing all the research about fish, I was really sorry that was over. Because I could have gone, I mean, you could go on forever
Yes.
in that. And it was so interesting. And I was sorry it was over because I got so attached to the fish. And right now, I must say I don't have something like that.
Okay.
But we'll see. Maybe I will soon.
I do have one final question.
Yeah.
It's particularly about the piece where you're swimming. It makes me curious about what your body is feeling when you're performing. And I know that might be, but I'm so curious about that because that's the thing that we don't necessarily get to see is your experience in it. So
I'll say, first of all, nobody knows how much work goes into what we do, right? They don't know.
right.
It's ridiculous. If my performance is going well, if I'm performing and it's going well, I don't feel anything. It's not that I don't feel anything, but I'm not aware of time passing.
Right.
If it's bad, I feel something. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. When is it going to be over? No, but
Right.
that hasn't, I mean, that used to happen to me when I was younger. And then it's a very, for me, I don't enjoy that at all. So I work really hard to get my pieces together.
Yes.
But this is just performance, it's not video. And what was your question?
Because I'm thinking about the video, even though I'm glad you said that about the actual live performance, but I'm thinking about when you're immersed in water or even when you're behind a mask and you're moving. Like, I'm curious about what your body is feeling during that time.
My body's just trying to do what I have to do. Because, I mean, in the swimming, it wasn't easy for me to stay underwater, even though I do swim underwater. But,
Yeah.
I kept floating to the surface. And a friend of mine was filming me. So I have to concentrate on the
Yes.
swimming and keeping you. It's not, you always have to concentrate. And, yeah.
You're right, though. I mean, the part, it's almost like if the camera was there to show the thing that actually happens when you're making the thing, it's sometimes hilarious, sometimes it's terrible, but yeah, it's a lot of work that goes into it, especially using your own body, because when you're filming someone else's body, you're there to guide it, but when it's you, you have to be the eyes that's on you, even though, yeah.
I mean, the way I deal with that, for me, I don't know if it's correct, there's a term in Sufi dancing, I'm probably completely wrong, called latihan, and it's when, the Sufi, they do the circular dance. You stand in one place, and you wait for a movement to come. So I've done that, like you stand here, and also, your body does that.
Yes.
And so in other words, you let your body, and in all of my work, because I perform in my work, but also make other things, my body brings me into it. I mean,
Yes.
without being conscious, without me explaining it. But your body decides, it's your mind too, but it decides how you're going to walk from here to there.
Right.
Because every movement has to be thought out for me, But other times you can do a wild dance. It's a hard question to answer. I don't think I'm answering it.
No, I think you're answering it perfectly, yes. I'm sitting here like,
But your body, but we love to dance. I bet you love to
I
dance
love
too.
to dance.
I love to dance. So then you get into a dance thing and you have to get warmed up. And then you just let your body go, right?
Yes.
In the space with the other people, and it's really great to do that.
Yes, yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I said,
Yeah, this was awesome.
I would like to say that it's wonderful to be up here with this big audience and to be in Colombia again. I can't believe it. Would I have known then that I was going to come back? No.
Right.
And also, thank you so much. And I'm so glad to meet Delphine. I have a new friend here.
Wonderful to spend time with you, too.